Good morning and welcome to the podcast. I'm Karen Weaver. The American Rivers Conference, a Division III conference located smack in the middle of the country, waited until mid-August to make the decision to postpone most of their fall sports, including football, men's and women's soccer, and volleyball. The conference does intend to go forward with mini seasons of fall competition in women's and men's cross country, women's golf, and women's tennis. In its press release, the ARC stated the NCAA Board of Governors put new mandates in its, quote, resocialization of college sport, unquote, plan, the most concerning of which was the requirements to test frequently with short windows for test results in several sports. Prior to Friday's announcement, the NCAA's member schools had the latitude to use local and state guidelines in their approach to safely practice and compete in the fall. My guest today is Dr. Darrin Good. He is currently the chair of the American Rivers Conference President's Council. He's also the president at Nebraska Wesleyan University. He joined the university as its first-time president after a long career as a biology professor at Augustana College in Illinois and administrative positions at Gustavus Adolphus College in Minnesota and then at Whittier College in California. He has served as a vice president of academic affairs and dean of the faculty at Whittier, one of the country's most ethnically and racially diverse private national liberal arts colleges with an enrollment of 1,700 students. As I said, this is his first presidency, and guess what? He was in charge of the new athletic conference as well, and in the middle of a pandemic. And Darrin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So, what a time to begin your very first presidency. And you've told me that you've been a Division III person most of your academic life. Tell us what it's been like and what you've learned so far.
And I assume you mean in the last year as
Yes.
president? Okay, yes. I guess to lay the foundation, I've been at 4 other Division III schools, both as a student at Augustana College. I shared with you I was a good high school triple jumper and a really mediocre to weak college triple jumper, but did participate in some varsity athletics and then at other Division III schools. So I believe deeply in how important athletics is to schools like ours. It's been really fun to be on this side as a president who just is a passionate champion of NCAA athletics. It's been really fun to be able to meet with coaches and our athletic director and show them my support and then work with other presidents in our conference.
That's great. Just tell us a little about Nebraska Wesleyan. I mean, probably most of my listeners have never been there. So what should we know?
That's right. So Nebraska Wesleyan is in Lincoln, Nebraska. So there's here in the same city as the University of Nebraska with Husker Athletics. And we're about 1,600 traditional undergraduates, about 2,100 total with our graduate and adult programs. Oh boy, I should know this, 18 different sports represented. Most recent enormous success, we won the national championship in basketball in 2013, men's basketball, but have a lot of really strong athletic traditions here.
That's terrific. What percentage of your athlete population is your student population comprised of?
It's a great question. It's about 30 to 35% in a given year. So I like to remind people, not only is that a significant number in itself, having a third of our students participating in varsity athletics, what we often see in our admission pool that more like 50% of our students coming here in the admission that pay tuition deposits think they're going to be varsity athletes. And so it is really important for schools like ours that we understand the holistic experience that our students are looking for, whether it's keeping athletics part of their life alive or music or theater or other things.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant amount. So obviously this decision that the American Rivers Conference needed to come to a decision on in mid-August was a difficult one, and you found yourself sitting in the chair of the council in your first full year. Tell us about what that was like, and how is the council constructed?
Yeah, so there are 9 teams in the athletic conference. The other 8 schools are all in the state of Iowa, and here we are just about 45 miles from the Iowa border where we sit. Um, I was told when I accepted the job that it was actually Nebraska Wesleyan's turn to have the president serve as the chair of the President's Council, as we call it here. They were generous to me, and the person sitting in the role agreed to stay on for a second year, President Buena Vista in Iowa. He then decided to resign his position in May. So I actually got thrown into this a couple months earlier than expected. And but I knew it was coming. It just came a few months earlier in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, is that all right? Well, obviously, it took a while for the conference to make their final decision about fall sports. Walk us through, first off, what you decided, and then start to tell us about how you weighed all the internal and external factors that went into that.
Yeah, so the President's Council has been meeting a lot throughout the spring and summer, virtually, of course, via Zoom. But at the same time, we've had task forces of athletic directors, coaches, and athletic trainers meeting to work on protocols and plans and develop different schedules to reduce travel and such. As we went through the summer and the pandemic continued, we were working really closely, watching what the NCAA was asking of us in their resocialization documents. Throughout the summer, they continued to say these are recommendations, not mandates. And what we believed was right was we should really be localized in our decision making. So we felt very strongly that Iowa and Nebraska had very low infection rates. We seemed to be in a place geographically where we could continue to safely lean into all of our athletic sports for the fall, knowing there was some additional risk, but not as significant amount of risk. As the summer progressed, a couple of things happened. One, the COVID cases, as everybody's seen, we're starting to tick up in the Midwest, particularly in Iowa, Omaha, in this state. But at the same time, the NCAA started sending us some pretty strong messages in August, late July and early August, that these recommendations are really mandates, and it's not the localized health departments that we should be paying attention to. They really forced our hand to postpone football, men's and women's soccer, and volleyball to the spring.
That's one of the people have struggled with the fact that the NCAA for so long has only issued guidelines for health and safety historically, and then all of a sudden, as you said, quickly it made it clear that it was becoming a mandate for Division III and for much of Division II as well. Right. Was that decision well received by the council, or were you moving so quickly that you just said, okay, fine?
I'll choose my words carefully.
Okay.
Simply said, it was not received well.
Okay.
Some presidents more than others. I think some felt like where they were geographically or what was happening locally, that maybe they felt like this is just making a decision that probably needed to be made. I think that there, as you can expect in 9 schools, there was a continuum of opinions on how strongly we felt we should go this route. But in the end, we were at consensus that we really were left feeling that the NCAA was mandating that we needed to cancel all of the the high-risk contact sports or postpone them, that is.
Right.
And I'll say that I think some of it was just different levels of risk tolerance at different schools, and some it was the local geography of COVID. And
Yeah.
I think some of us really felt like we were in a place where a few of our students come from outside the state. In our case, about 20%, well, less than 20% of our Nebraska Wesleyan students come from outside of Nebraska. So the infection rate in the state is low, and we knew most of our students were likely to come back without infection, and that's borne out in our testing so far.
No kidding. So,
Yeah.
so where, when they come from outside, where do they typically come from? Do they come from Iowa or do they come from other nearby states?
Fewer in Iowa, that even though we get a good number, but our big draw are from the state of Colorado and the Kansas City area. Part of it is if students want to play NCAA sports, Iowa's got so many great schools, 8 of them that I'll really brag about in our conference. But Colorado, other than there's only 1 or 2 Division III NCAA schools, so there aren't a lot of small colleges for students athletes to keep their careers going. So we have had really good success there. But also, so the contiguous states, Iowa, South Dakota, Missouri, Kansas, but also Texas and California have been some of the areas that we draw from.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into Lincoln. Since you are sharing the city with the big University of Nebraska, how much were your efforts and thinking tied into what was inevitably going to come back to campus, which was students returning at the University of Nebraska Lincoln? How does that go?
Well, what's wonderful is the city of Lincoln has just been fantastic, aggressively mandating masks in a way that the culture here shifted much faster than certainly the rest of the state of Nebraska and Iowa. Neither governor in Iowa or Nebraska would mandate a mask requirement. Fortunately, the city of Lincoln did so. And so we continued to have very low infection rates, little stress on our hospital systems. So I often would thank our mayor and our local health department at setting the stage for us to be able to welcome students back. Now, I know that was in part, because they love Nebraska Wesleyan, but I say that facetiously. We know the city of Lincoln and the state of Nebraska loves Husker athletics, and Husker football is nearly a religion. And therefore, it's not just a cultural piece of importance here in Lincoln and in Nebraska, it's an enormous financial driver. So I'm sure the mayor and the county health department were doing it for the good reasons, the right reasons, but an added benefit, of course, was to help feed the economy, because being able to get back to Husker athletics, and particularly football and volleyball, are the 2 draws for tourism, is really important for the culture and economy of the city.
That makes total sense. So here we are near the end of August. Just give me a quick snapshot. Where are you with your students in terms of return to campus, and where is the University of Nebraska Lincoln in terms of their return?
Right. So here at Nebraska Wesleyan, we are in the middle of our 2nd week of classes. So student athletes, though, returned about 3 weeks ago, some of them. We began testing them about 10 days ago. We've tested about 600 of our 1,600 students, all of our student athletes for all the seasons, including winter and spring sports, have been tested with a very low infection rate, less than 2%. And so we've been able to identify, those students, isolate them in on-campus housing, or they can go home if that's what they prefer, and then did quick contact tracing and have put several dozen students in quarantine, who are almost all of those students are about to come out of quarantine today or tomorrow. The problem was it wasn't, the infection certainly came with them. It's interesting, the spread or the quarantine was less to do with athletics, It was their social connections to the Greek system. So mostly some sororities that had an infected person that caused the quarantine. So that's where we are at Nebraska Wesleyan. University of Nebraska also started classes about 10, 11 days ago, but they had a week of online classes and they just came back to in-person classes, blended model on Monday of this week, so 3 days ago.
Okay, so you're fully in person, right? Does anybody have the opportunity to Zoom in? If they wanted to Zoom in, could they do that?
Great question. Absolutely. So being as we have such nice small class sizes to begin with, we were able to have many of our classes still fully face-to-face. However, we prepared every class, every faculty member prepared their courses in the event that students might have to miss because of isolation or quarantine, or if the class was so big enough that we couldn't have desks separated by 6 feet and still fit everybody, then students would usually still be involved in every class session. You either attend in person or you Zoom in simultaneously. And so students would sometimes, they'll come to class Monday, Zoom in Wednesday, come to class Friday, Zoom in the next Monday, etc. However, students who have health concerns could completely go online or Zoom in and do virtual courses exclusively. And the same with our faculty. There's a few who have accommodations, but very few who are doing all virtual courses.
It's certainly been challenging. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Now you have a couple of sports that are actually competing this fall. Tell us how that's been going, and then also kind of what the structure looks like for them.
Yeah, it's exciting. So we are, again, for those who aren't aware, there's 3 different levels. There's a high contact risk sports, football, soccer, and volleyball for the fall. There's low contact risk, which is tennis and golf. And then there's middle risk or medium risk, which is cross country, at least for our sports. We made the decision as a conference, again, because of our low infection rate and because the NCAA kind of called it a medium risk with an asterisk, meaning if you could find a way to accommodate it and decrease the risk at the beginning and end of the race in particular, they thought it could move to a low risk sport. So we are, I'm excited because we have a great golf team, men's and women's. We just have resurfaced some new tennis courts. And so was gonna break my heart having a daughter who played some college tennis to not be able to use those courts. So we are having the women's tennis and the men have a few meets, but cross country, I just checked in with our athletic director before I got on this blog conversation to make sure, or podcast that is, I understood how we were going to do cross country.
Yeah. So will you compete around, when are you starting your competitions? First week in September, second week in September?
Second week of September.
Okay. And you'll go until end of October, I assume? Or are you going to go that long?
It may go that long. There's fewer competitions. Most conferences either have canceled or postponed their seasons or have at least reduced their non-conference matches. So,
right. So, just one other question about your colleagues in the conference. Do they share a similar percentage of athletes as part of the student population? Are they in the same ballpark as you in that 30 to 35% range?
Yes, I don't have that in my mind for sure, but I would guess 25 to 40% range is probably going to encapsulate just about all of them.
Okay. And your sense is right now, when will the conference start discussing the fall seasons transitioning to the spring seasons?
It's already begun. And so we're already starting to look at schedules for the fall, when those might be. And one of the difficulties is going to be the facilities, the stress on facilities. Schools like ours don't have dedicated fields for soccer and football and track and field. So there's a lot of shared facilities that are going to be tough. The other piece of it is the pressure on athletic trainers having more seasons or more sports in the same season is going to really stress us. So we're all working on trying to find extra staffing, which we've already done for our athletic training so that we have the support for the athletes we need. And then finally, I haven't heard any challenges here, but we are expecting one of the difficulties might be the officiating. So many referees do different seasons and different times of the year. And so whether or not that's going to start to be difficult to schedule.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would think also, and this is getting into the weeds because of my background as a coach and an athletic director, but, just the space in the athletic training room. You're not used to having football in the spring and baseball and all the other larger teams that need to get through there so they can get out to the field. That's got to be tough.
Exactly. And many of our schools, at least we can say this way, we have been wanting to get a bigger AT area. So it was smaller than we'd like to begin with. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. How do we not only increase the capacity because we have more athletes, but also increase the capacity because we need to possibly stay 6 feet away and really protect each other.
It's a great point. So pulling back a little bit, let's talk about Nebraska Wesleyan's strategy to survive as an institution this pandemic and also the demographic shifts that are coming up in the next 4 or 5 years.
Right. So we're very fortunate, very conservative Nebraskans fiscally as well as other ways. And so they have been very careful with our money. We just built a beautiful new science building that cost almost $30 million. Didn't borrow a penny. They raised every cent of it, including extra to pay for deferred or maintenance. And so we have very little debt load. We're fortunate too that our students showed up. And so we had very little melt this year. We are very blessed in that regard. I know a lot of schools, especially those depending on international students, have really been hit hard. But us as an institution, Nebraska Wesleyan, are in great shape. We feel really good. We had to tighten our belt as we readjusted our budget in the spring leading into this year. But right now, if things continue to hold and we feel good that it's going to be a fine year and we're going to come out of this in great shape. Down the road, as you said, as some are calling it, the admission cliff that's coming in 3 to 7 years with the number of high school graduates declining. Fortunately, Nebraska is one of the areas that has very little decline expected. Just a few percentage decreases. Now and that's where, again, this year, of our first year class, 80% of our first year students are from Nebraska. So it's been anywhere from 75% to 85% of our students come from Nebraska over the last 10 years. And so this is our sweet spot. This is where most of our students come from, and there's not going to be a significant decline in high school graduates. However, we know other states are going to come looking for students here. And we are working to prepare for the changing demographics. Even though the number of high school graduates is not going to decline significantly, there is going to be major shifts in the race ethnicity with growing Latino and Latinx population and lower socioeconomic factors. So we know it's going to be a different group of high school graduates that we see in the next 5 to 10 years. And so we already serve about 30% of our students are Pell eligible at Nebraska Wesleyan. We actually were just ranked 3rd in the country for small private schools for socioeconomic mobility or economic mobility of our students when they graduate. So we're already serving the students that I think are going to be continuing to graduate from our high schools.
That's really tremendous. And you're absolutely right to identify that the demographic shift is not going to happen just with your in-state residents, but also across racial, gender, and socioeconomic lines. And I have a colleague at Penn who wrote a book called Mission Centered and Market Smart. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're trying to do is to talk about what is your mission and what do we want to be. We're not trying to be anything that we're not. And we're also trying to be smart about our marketplace.
Yeah. But we also know that we are continuing to grow, and we're making enormous efforts to be even more than just welcoming, but the NCAA I see is starting to use the same language I've been promoting. We're going to have a campaign of belonging. This idea that it's not enough just to be welcoming to a diverse group of students, faculty, and staff, because by definition, a welcoming environment means there's those of us who belong here that already were here, and we're going to welcome those of you who don't really belong or are new to this. So we want it to feel like no matter who you are, how you identify, that you get here and you feel like you belong. You're not an outsider who's being welcomed.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, essential for us to continue to grow as an institution.
I think you're absolutely right on that. I think that's a really good nuance in the word shift and helping people understand that we all belong here, and we're not us and them, it's all of us. That's great. So many of our listeners aspire to become college presidents at some point in their careers. What advice would you give them to build their learning curve around college athletics oversight and how it is public facing as one of your visible entities of your college campus community?
Well, for me, it began as just an honest passion. I grew up playing sports, in small high school, football, basketball, and track. Continued to play basketball and tennis. Still try to get out there and play tennis badly and basketball when my knees allow. So I think engaging with athletics. As a professor, I loved being part of the recruiting process. So working with athletics, if they had a recruit, I would show them the biology labs, take them into our cadaver lab, and really learn to work with the coaches on how they saw how Division III athletics fit in with not only the admission, but how the retention and creating successful student athletes who become fantastic alumni.
Right.
So I think I was involved in different committees that worked on athletics and part of our strategic planning at one time. I volunteered, or maybe it was volunteered, to be on part of the pillars for athletics in our strategic planning. And when I was a professor, I just continued to try to work closely with the coaches. I think going to sporting events, getting to know your student athletes so you can be sensitive to the challenges, especially Division III. They're not doing it for the glory of or the possible. They're not doing it for a scholarship, so not money here and now. There's not a pro career at the end. They really are doing it because they love doing it, and so the sacrifices they're making just because they simply love playing their sport.
Yeah.
I think, it helps you empathize with them and start to empathize with the coaches who also don't do it for the money in Division III.
Yeah, that's absolutely true as well. Well, and Dr. Darrin Good, thank you so much for spending some time with both me and my listeners to talk about the unique situation that Nebraska Wesleyan is in this era of beginning the fall 2020 term under COVID-19. So thank you.
My pleasure. It's a joy to be with you. And I think we all are praying and hoping for athletics to come back so we can stop watching tiddlywinks on TV and other kind of sporting events.
Or cornhole, right?
Yeah, there you go. My knees will let me play that.
There you go. There you go. Thanks, Darrin.
Thank you so much, Karen.